Okay, morning everybody. Welcome to today's academic meeting. A little bit of a different twist to our usual clinical themes. I'm very excited to introduce our speaker this week. It's Professor Aletta Millen, who will be speaking to us in her capacity as Assistant Dean for Research within the faculty. Professor Millen has a very impressive CV. I'm not going to read through all of it, but just to highlight her research credentials and why she is the right person to speak to us about this, other than being the Assistant Dean for Research. Professor Millen is the director of the Integrated Molecular Physiology Research Initiative. Her research there focuses on understanding inflammation's role in the development of non-communicable diseases, particularly cardiovascular and neurological disorders. And she has a strong emphasis on translational science, ensuring that laboratory findings have clinical relevance. So just a little thing there, if you're thinking of doing any research, I think Professor Millen is the right person to speak to. She also holds both a PhD and an MBA from WITS, and she is passionate about authentic leadership in academia, and she's committed to building research capacity and developing strategic partnerships. So she really is the right person to speak to. So I'm going to hand over to Professor Millen, and then we'll have some questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, Jared. It sounds more impressive on paper than what it really is. But thank you for having me today. It is really an honor and a privilege to speak to the clinical departments, and it's something that is really big on my radar, and as you know, also the deans, to make sure that research flourishes in the clinical environment. So I have a couple of disclaimers before we start. So I'm not a clinician. So I don't want to come from the point where I make it sound like I know what your life is like. I don't. Okay. So, but maybe having conversations with people different to you is really enlightening for you today, I hope. This is also not going to be a lecture on what you need to do. I am not going to stand here and tell you this is how you should do research and this is how you should just protect your time for research. I understand the realities of your everyday life. So this really is about a practical conversation to build a research trajectory with joint staff, and in a system which I know that is not always easy to navigate. So I also know that joint roles are pretty complex and loaded, and that people have to operate between the system, between the Department of Health and with the university. So we do recognize that the system is quite complex. Now, I wanted to start with a little bit. So when Jared and I had the conversation about like, what exactly do you want me to talk about? I was like, do you want me to talk about promotion criteria? Do you want me to talk about how to get promoted in academia? And he's like, no, please don't do that. But I wanted to just make the point that the promotion criteria, you know, are under review at the moment. And there are 3 town hall sessions with the School of Clinical Medicine which have been scheduled, where you guys have an opportunity to engage in the promotion criteria to make sure that your voices are heard. And we'll speak a little bit now about academic progression and like what are the gaps. We'll touch on that just now. But when I was preparing for this, I thought it would be really good to frame some of how you felt. And you know that the survey was done about a year ago or so, the culture survey as part of the WITS 100, and it was first done in all the university staff. And then we felt it was really important that joint staff have a specific survey who pertains to your particular environment. So from this culture survey, and these are our responses from your peers, when they asked, do I belong here? And the lack of belonging is very evident. So that people don't feel like they belong at WITS. They also feel like they don't really belong in the Department of Health, and somehow they are falling through the cracks. But there's so many of you. So how do we make sure that this is addressed? So as joint staff, we often feel we are second-class citizens, neither fitting in the department or with WITS. Trying to achieve new heights is often met with barriers. WITS does very little to create a sense of belonging. And for the talk today, I also snipped the results for research. So research happens in spite of the system. So what kind of recognition exists? Joint staff feel that they are unsupported. The administrative burden blocks the ability to do research. Career progression is seen as political or biased, and the lack of capacity, there's a lack of capacity in critical support roles. Okay. So we want to do research, but we can't. And supervision or support is only given to A-rated scientists. Okay. So whether that is true or not doesn't really matter. It is about your perception about how the system, how you feel about the system. Because I can say to you, many of these things are not exactly true, but that doesn't mean that your perception is not valid. Before we go on, I wanted to frame, like, do you guys know this? This is the vision for WITS for 2033. Have you seen this in any shape or form? Yes? No? Okay. So this is the VC's, it's not the VC's vision, it's a vision that was co-created, but obviously it's coming from the VC. So the first one is advancing a shared identity. And that speaks specifically to the culture survey, where you guys say you don't feel like you have an identity at WITS. So this is something that really is part of the vision. So how do we make sure that all members of WITS feel that they have the shared identity? So looking after the people. Then the second one is about pursuing academic excellence, excellence in teaching and excellence in research. So that if we as a university do not have that as one of our visions or our mandates or missions or whatever you want to call it, then really we shouldn't be existing as a university. Okay, and then the other two is social impact, which is obviously something that you guys do on a daily basis. And then ensuring sustainability. How do we make sure that we build for the future? That this cycle of feeling that I'm not valued, not part of the system, doesn't get perpetuated. I have a couple of harsh things that I will say today as well. So do forgive me. Clinical medicine might hate me for forever and ever more, and I'll never be invited to clinical medicine again. But I wanted to make the point that, and even for academic staff who, according to you, have a very cushy life of just doing some teaching and just some research, okay? It's not cushy, trust me. But all of us, doesn't matter where you are, we all feel like if you do your job well, and if you're really good at it, and if you do well at research, and you teach really well, and the students love you, that the recognition must just come automatically. Do you agree? If you do your job well, you feel like you should be recognized by the university. Do you feel like that? Yes. Trust me, that's not going to happen. So nobody is going to come to you and say, come, darling, please apply for promotion. Okay. That is not going to happen. Promotion and career progression is driven from the individual. It has to be driven from within. I started 15 years ago at this university. I've been promoted 4 times since I started. Started as an associate lecturer. I've been promoted lecturer, senior lecturer, blah, blah, blah. Not a single time did my line manager say to me, and my line manager, they really liked me, and it was the same line manager that promoted me 4 times. Not once did he say to me, come on, Letaki, you're doing so well, come, let's promote you. It doesn't happen. Career progression is your responsibility. You have to make sure that your career progresses. Okay, right. So no, the university is not going to bring you promotion on a silver platter. But what can you do in the system to make sure that your career progresses? Okay, so a couple of things that career progression is not. So the university is not on purpose trying to put obstacles in your way and saying, we are going to block your promotion. If that is how you feel, that is completely not true. There might be things that make you feel like that. But what are those things that we can address? How can we lower those barriers? How can we take the obstacles out of the way? And in terms of career progression, there's a very, very clear roadmap of how do you progress in your career. And there's some people sitting in this audience who have done it really well, who have used the system, who have made sure that the things that they do on a daily basis speak to their career progression. So what is the roadmap? How do we get from being, I see there's a lot of young faces in the room, from just starting out in your career to becoming a full professor in not too long time? You can do that within 10 to 15 years. Now, it's really important when we want to see where we want to be, the desired state. So you want to progress in your career, you want to love your job, you want to come here every day. It needs to be all hunky-dory. Okay. But that obviously is not the case right now. You feel unappreciated, you feel unvalued. So we need to see where are we currently? What are the obstacles? What are the problems? What are the things that really hinder your career progression? And then where do we want to be? What is it that you ideally want? Now, in order to do that, we need to acknowledge what is the gap? What is the problem? And how are we going to bridge this gap? And so I put this poor guy, you can see he feels really upset with life. Okay. Many of your faces look similar to this elephant's faces today. Like, so how do you, what's the elephant in the room that we need to acknowledge? What are the things that you feel really hinders your career progression, specifically regarding research? So I'm going to acknowledge the ones that you've already mentioned. You've got a high clinical load in terms of service delivery and expectations from the Department of Health. You also have a high teaching expectation, right? Some of the things which you've mentioned is that there's no way for me to assess my teaching. How do I make sure that people know that I'm a good teacher? I don't have protected time to do research. I feel like I'm unsupported in research. What other white elephants are there? You're in a research constraint, resource constraint environment. Very often you have to treat the patient without the resources that you need. So what are the other things? What is the other elephants in the room that we are missing? This is a question to you. Procrastination. Okay, that's an elephant. Anything else? What do you feel is hindering you from progressing in your career?
Why?
Hey?
Why?
Why?
Why bother?
Okay. All right. The motivation to do. Good.
I think it's actually Mohammed's giving me a good introduction there to my point. Is the whiteboard that feels like doing research in this setting is there's so many obstacles to doing it. You know, from the hospital, and I know this is not a good thing, from the hospital perspective, there's no functioning electronic medical record. If you want to go back and look at files, you have to beg records to look at 10 files at a time. And it's a difficulty in actually accessing the data. It's then the small things in terms of ethics. You have to get permission from here, permission from there, and obviously you're not saying we must throw out research ethics.
Yeah.
But there's so many stumbling blocks along the way, and it seems that, as you said already, that housing health, the hospital and the university don't speak to each other. And so as much as patients are in a teaching hospital, we have to do approval from Wits Ethics, approval from the hospital, which is fair, but it's the consent processes, as opposed to I think of somewhere like Don Gordon, where when you're admitted, you sign a consent form for research. And then obviously a lot of overseas hospitals, as you're admitted, you get this sort of thing. So there's so many things that we could probably do to make it easier. But there's the apathy, the why, and the difficulty in actually doing it.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah, and I think a large problem, and we're all very aware of the contentious relationship with the Department of Health and the universities, and it's with all the universities in Gauteng. It is not something that is a huge barrier to research. I completely agree. There's no medical records. There's the lack of motivation. Like, I pitch up every day, I slog so hard. Why should I go write a paper on the weekend? So those things are obviously all very real. But research is something that's very internally motivated. And research is not for everyone, and that is okay. With the promotion criteria, you guys will see, we are providing much larger latitude for people to progress in their career, excelling in the thing that you really are good at. Trying to slog this horse and flog this horse and saying, you have to do this, you have to look like this. We really need to let go of that. And that is something that we are working really hard at, to say, let's celebrate people for where they are really good. But the one thing I need to say is that the research is extremely internally motivated. Okay, yes, there's promotion criteria and there's an expectation to do research, but it's internally motivated. If you don't want to, you are not going to. Okay. So one thing I just wanted to say, like, beware of the gap. If all you ever focus on is the gap, you are going to keep falling in that gap, right? So how are we going to move beyond the gap? We have acknowledged the elephant in the room. We have said it is hard. We all acknowledge that it's hard. But how do we move beyond the gap? What are the things that we can do to not just be stuck in that gap? So where do the opportunities already exist? Okay. Now, I must say, like, I was actually in this room probably around about a year ago, and Francois Venter gave a talk just after the US government funding got pulled. Okay. So I started this job in an unbelievably tumultuous time. The day I walked in, and I mean, our dean is not an extremely explicit person and like giving you a to-do list from 1 to 10. That's not his style. I walked in here with with a blank canvas, and he's just like, fix it. And so now you walk in here, and now I have to fight with Trump. He doesn't even know that I exist on the face of the earth. So, but in that time, in the last year, I cannot tell you the amount of things that have changed in this faculty and also in the university in order to be more responsive to staff. And we'll go through a little bit of some of the initiatives now. Okay, but where do the opportunities already exist? Now, the one thing that you guys have to acknowledge, and you have to agree with me on this, that where you work is really the breeding ground for amazing research to happen. There's so many interesting patients that you can write case reports about. You already have to teach. If teaching is your thing, you can make your research about teaching. You can make your career about teaching. You don't have to decide, okay, I'm going to find a vaccine against HIV. That doesn't have to be your research question. It could be around the things that you do already in the current teaching platform. We had a strategic retreat about a week or two ago. And one of the things that we spoke about strategy and why the strategies fail. So if your strategy is to advance your career, but your everyday life doesn't speak to your strategy, you are not going to make it. Your everyday life, the things that you do on a daily basis, needs to speak to the things that you want to achieve. So if your everyday life is limited by the things that you have to do teaching, you have to do clinical service, then your strategy needs to form around the things that you do on a daily basis, the area in which you work in. It doesn't help you to want to be a molecular scientist if what you do is clinical teaching and clinical work every day. So postgraduate supervision, most of you have to supervise MMeds. Use that as an opportunity. Okay, and we'll speak a little bit more around the opportunities for that. Clinical registries and audits, you can write a paper on like addressing some or other policy and how to treat a specific condition, etc. If this is something that you work with on a daily basis. Curriculum innovation is something that lots of you are involved in already. Service delivery challenges, like how do we turn our challenges into opportunities for research? And I know it sounds very altruistic and like I'm like you have no idea what you're talking about. But why do we not address problems, or how do we not turn our problems into opportunities that we could address? Then quality improvement and multi-site collaboration. So these are the ways in which you guys are already involved in on a daily basis. So how can you turn those things into something that you can use for research? So I want to talk a little bit about demystifying the system. Okay, and please, this is not me telling you, okay, you need to go on library training or you need to go for Zotero training, but let's look a little bit about the ecosystem of research in this faculty. Okay. So as Jared mentioned, I'm the Assistant Dean for Research, and we provide a huge amount of opportunities and support for all staff, regardless of whether it's joint staff or academic staff. So, but it is really important that you make the effort in trying to find out what is going on. Okay, come to these meetings. We'll make sure that things are communicated to you, and we'll talk now a little bit around communication. So you've seen also in the foyer on the 4th floor, there are now all these big screens that have been put up. There will be information around like accessibility and opportunities that will be flashed via those screens all the time. So there are various support structures in the research office, and we'll talk a little bit about some of them. So some of the initiatives which have happened in the past year or so. The first one that has happened is like, and this is something that Ziad and Alicia and Zane and Deirdre Kruger, lots of people have actually been involved in trying to develop, is a dashboard around the researchers which are in the faculty. Okay. Now, you know, when you Google somebody in Wits, what do you find? Have you Googled anybody at Wits? And their staff profile. Have you clicked on their staff profile? Then what do you get? If you are lucky, an org ID, a gray outline of a face, not even a real profile picture. And no profile. No, what is this person about? It might be like this person works in the Department of Internal Medicine. That is literally the only thing that you get. So WITS is so far behind when it comes to researcher profiling. If you look at Pretoria, if you look at UJ, if you look at UCT, Stellenbosch, if you Google a researcher there, it comes up with their entire like CV from when they were the class captain in 2002. So what we have developed, and this was literally approved last week at SET, we had a SET retreat and we piloted this. So this was, I snipped this literally last night. I don't know if this thing is going to work. Let's see. So it's a real-time dashboard. Oh, it's not sharing now. It is a real-time dashboard. Sorry, now I've lost my screen. Okay, so it's a live dashboard about researchers. And I just slipped 2 pictures from Prof. Mahdi. So you can see his entire research career from 2007, all the research areas that he does research in, how many publications that he have, what's his H index. You can also see who all his collaborators are. You can see the grants that he's obtained. And that is available to now every single researcher, every single person who is listed as a joint staff member and an academic staff member in this faculty. So we've piloted it with the Faculty of Health Sciences, and that is now going to go and be upscaled for the rest of the university. So this is a dashboard that we are building. Another thing that this dashboard is supposed to do is be an internal resource to people. Okay. So where, if you want to say, for instance, you want to do flow cytometry for whatever sample that you've got. Now, you can't go and now source a flow cytometer. It's like 2 million rand. Where are you going to get the money from? But there are already 8 flow cytometers in this faculty. So it will give you a list of all the equipment that's available. How do you contact the person who owns the flow cytometer? Like, what do you need for sample prep? So there will be an entire SOP, like you need to prep your sample like this, you need to collect it like this, you need to store it in liquid nitrogen, you need to do it like this. So when you're planning your study, you know exactly how do you need to store your sample if you want to do whatever research on it. It will also be if you want to find collaborators. So you want to do a study in mental health disorders, or whatever the case is. You're a neurologist and you want to now work with somebody in public health about mental health. So now you can find somebody in public health who does research in this area. So it is a dashboard that will be internally facing to show what are the resources that are available. It will also list all the grants that are open at the moment. It will list if there are abstract submissions that are open. So all the opportunities for you to grow as a researcher will be hosted on this platform. And it will also be externally facing for people who are looking for you. Another thing, what I would like to do is really encourage you to follow the social media of the faculty. It shows so many times how we celebrate people and their achievements. And please, no achievement is too small for us to celebrate. What I've tried to do since I've started is really not to celebrate the big heroes which you always hear about. We are trying to find pockets of excellence in the faculty and celebrating people for the things that they are doing. There are so many people who are doing amazing things. You need to submit that information to us so that we can hero you. So the Faculty of Health Sciences LinkedIn page, you really need to follow. I asked Leanne also to so we have got a new I'll show you the QR code now. So we have got a WhatsApp group which you will get information, because I know many of you don't access your emails. And don't worry, I'm not going to shout at you for not using a Wits email. You all know you need to do that. I promise I won't shout. But you need to access the information that is available. So if you don't check your Wits email, then follow the WhatsApp group so that you can get the information that's coming through from the faculty. There's also, every week, I send out a research circular. It's called the Health Sciences Research Connect. It goes every week on a Monday or a Tuesday, depending on how bad my Monday is, where all the information that is available to you is shared. Because currently, there are probably about 4 or 5 internal opportunities. The FRC grants are out, the Iris Ellen grants are out, there are grants out for postdocs. There are grant calls out for travel, for the KIC. So if you want to go to an international conference, the NRF gives money for travel, quite a lot of money. You can actually take a postgrad student with you. The 2 people can go. So there are all the opportunities that are available to you. And we very often highlight specifically the things that are relevant to clinician scientists. So make sure that you check this thing on a weekly basis. It literally is going to take you 30 seconds to scroll through and see if there's anything that's relevant to you. So we bring it to you so that you don't have to go and find it somewhere else on like a large website where you have to scroll through a million things. Some of the other things which I wanted to talk about. So you know that the Postgraduate Office from Joel Nelson, they host several courses. And it's not just for postgraduate students, it's also for emergent staff. So in terms of examiner courses on how to review a protocol, courses on how to write a research grant, courses on how to develop a methodology. There's stats consultations which are available. But nowadays with AI, you don't need a statistician. You have a statistician on your smartphone. Just to say, I want to do this kind of analysis, or I need to compare this group to this group. I want to do a multivariate multivariate association between X, Y, and Z. It will give you a code that you can plug into your stats program of choice. So these things are really becoming so much easier with AI. We also are starting an Emergent Researchers Forum, where emergent researchers will be given skills other than research methodology and stats and whatever. Will be softer skills around research. How do you build a research network? How do you make sure that you profile yourself on social media? How do you do science communication other than writing an academic paper? And also it will help you to develop networks, find new collaborators. So those of you who are in the emergent phase, like within 5 years of your PhD, that forum will probably start around about April. Then there's lots of research events around the faculty. So IDORI holds a lot of seminars. There's several events around the faculty that gets advertised. They will be on the billboards around the campus as well. Make sure that you attend those, because being visible in research, in the research community, starts accumulating and building some momentum in trying to get your research career up and going. One thing I need to punt today is that the Faculty of Health Sciences Research Day is happening this year in September, the 17th of September. Make sure you block off the day. Make sure that you present an abstract or a poster or a talk at the research day. The abstract submission deadline will probably be around May. We're going to ask many of you to host sessions, to chair sessions, to be involved in the student competitions. And one thing what we are doing this year is we are actually having a specific competition for undergraduate students, both in the Bachelor of Health Sciences and MBBCH and Therapeutic Sciences. We will have a specific session only for undergraduate students where you guys can come and show your research. And if it's a GMP5 group, which got a group research project and you want to come and showcase that, that is really the place to do it. And there's prizes to be won. There's going to be like competitions and there's going to be like treasure hunts, all kinds of things that will happen. And then, you know, that in the last 5 years since Prof. Mahdi has been the dean, there's been a very, very large focus in trying to train clinician scientists and clinical scientists. And you need to take advantage of those opportunities. People, nobody else in the university gets the opportunities that the clinician scientists do. It is supposed to be competitive with a salary that could be similar to in the clinical environment. So we don't expect you to now earn poor basic science salaries, please. Okay, so there is opportunities that you really need to take advantage of. And having conversations with your head of department, etc., taking a year or two out to do your PhD really is a huge investment in your career going forward. There are lots of opportunities. Make sure that you use them. The MRC give opportunities for PhD studies. The Carnegie used to give, but that's stopped now. The Discovery gives opportunities for doing PhDs. So clinician scientists, if you really are committed and focused to becoming a clinician scientist, there are a lot of opportunities available. Okay, and then there will also be a mentoring group. Alicia will be part of that. So a mentoring group in terms of research for clinicians. So you know that we already have the integrated PhDs, the clinician PhDs. So there will be a mentoring group around clinician scientists that will be mentored by other clinician scientists. Currently, Prof. Pettifor is doing it, but he is retiring. So we will get some other people to help with that. So in terms of the pre-award water process, most of you who have applied for a grant will know that it is often really like navigating the system, and it's like that specific thing is like, why bother? If I look at this application, it is going to take me days, I might as well not. So one of the things that my office is putting together with the Wits Health Consortium and Central University is a pre-award support system. So the scientists can focus on the science, and there will be some external support available for how do you write a data management plan? How do you get your data on an open repository? How do you make sure that all your ethics things are ticked? How do you make sure that all the legal things are ticked in your grant application? So those kinds of things, which often are like, seems insurmountable, we will provide support to get those done. So a couple of tips, tricks, and survival strategies in terms of starting your research career, and also for those of you who have already been extremely successful in doing that. So research time protection, I'm not going to talk about too much about it. You all know, like the lady said, like sometimes we can procrastinate, and time that could be used, spent for research, we procrastinate on Instagram, whatever the case is. Right. So making sure that there's time for protected research. Now, I know you're going to probably throw rotten tomatoes at me because you're like, there's never time. So I do get that. I do understand that. So that's why I'm not going to belabor the point. The one thing I wanted to focus on, or the two things, is the collaboration strategies and making supervision count. So I know the School of Clinical Medicine is like a beast on its own, but you know there are 5 other schools in this faculty, right? Which might have similar interests to the things that you are doing already. Okay. Using collaborators wisely is the best way in order to grow your research career quickly. Getting your name on the middle as a middle author on a paper early in your career is really important. Don't underestimate the value of that. You don't have to be the first author or the last author on every publication. You need to be the first or last author on like 10 or 20% of your publications. The one thing I wanted to say, and this is coming from a basic scientist speaking to clinicians, you don't always have to be the authority on everything. It is okay not to know, like, how does a PCR work? That is okay. That is somebody else's job. It is not your job to do that. What your job is, your role, is bringing the clinical part, bringing your expertise to the table. And that is the beauty about collaborations. Everybody bringing their various expertise make the team flourish so much more. So if you are worried that like, oh, I can't remember like the HPA axis from second year endocrinology, that doesn't matter. Bring what it is that you have to the table. So I'll tell the story, and because I love this person dearly, and when I reached out to a clinician in internal medicine, and I needed access to patients for a particular study. And so I contacted this person, and she was very nice and very accommodating, whatever. But I very much felt like I was now the help in the room. Okay. But very soon our relationship started growing, and she saw the value of partnering with a basic scientist. Her research grew exponentially as a result of being part. She had access to a molecular facility, she had this, she had that, and all of a sudden, the study that she envisioned looked very different to what the actual output was. So make sure that when you partner with basic scientists, with public health specialists, with therapeutic scientists, that we treat each other with from the understanding that everybody brings something to the table. Okay, so that's my appeal to you today. The other thing is making supervision count. So many of you have to supervise MMeds, and I know very often an MMed feels like it's just something to tick off. And can they just rather do away with it so that I can just do my clinical work? But the MMed really is a huge opportunity for the supervisor as well as for the student. And there also, getting a co-supervisor from another department helps both the MMed student learn new skills, but it also capacitates you as the clinician who feel that you don't have the capacity to supervise MMed students. So make the supervision count. So we today actually have a research entity forum where all the research entity directors are invited, and we talk about some of the research issues and some of the operational troubles, whatever in the faculty with regards to research. And there's been a huge disconnect, I feel, between the research entities and what happens in clinical medicine. And there is a very, very big opportunity to bridge that gap, where we want to provide projects to people who need to supervise an MEd and say, we have a young clinician who needs to supervise an MEd, partner with the research entity. They have huge databases, they have huge sample banks, which you can tap into. You don't have to come up with the project on your own. You can co-create a project and say, I see this problem in the clinic, I want to address this thing. Partnering with some of the research entities who has the capacity to help you supervise, who has the capacity to give you data. So those opportunities do exist, and we're going to make sure that we reach out to whoever coordinates the MEd programs and make sure that those projects become available. So if you don't have a project, you go and pick one there. And then, so if we do that, I think the quality of the MEds would be really like world-class, that we could publish the papers. I know we already do a lot of great work, but there is scope for some improvement. And as I mentioned, make sure that you remain visible in the research networks. So I wanted to talk a little bit, just my last slide, on career progression. And I think, as I mentioned right in the beginning, waiting to be invited for your career to progress, that is probably, if nobody's going to invite you, if it doesn't come from you to progress your career, it's never going to happen. Then another thing is that we don't record things. You do so much. You teach, you do curriculum development, you supervise, you give talks, you are leading some or other discussion at like a pharmaceutical day or whatever the case is, but we don't document those things. Then by the time that you need to do your CV, you have long forgotten those things. So make sure that the things that you do, you document so that we can start generating a portfolio of evidence for your career to progress. Another thing is that we do work that doesn't translate. As I mentioned earlier, if your strategy is to progress, you need to make sure that things that you do on a daily basis speaks to the progression. So don't try and do research here in an area which has got nothing to do with your day-to-day activities. Leverage your day-to-day things in order to grow your career. Some practical tips: keep a running CV. Every year you need to have like at least 2 to 3 or 4 versions of your CV, which you continuously update. Then creating categories early. So don't wait until promotion to be like, oh goodness, they need academic citizenship in the CV. Know that they need that. Know what the roadmap is in order to get promoted. So make sure you know you are promoted on your research, your teaching, your clinical work, as well as on academic citizenship, which is not the same as clinical work. Start working on various of the portfolios at the same time. Don't wait until promotion. Because trust me, I sat on our Staffing and Promotions Committee. I cannot tell you how many times we get CVs, which you can see. The CV was done literally 2 days before the deadline. The head of school was squashed and said, come, I need to go for promotion. Can you sign off on this thing? The CV is poorly filled. The font is all over the place. Every single formatting is different in every category. Even the way in which people list their publications, they will sometimes just put the title of the publication. No name, no journal. So I promise you these things happen. So make sure that you start filling that thing. It's a beast. It takes very long. Make sure you fill it continuously. And then also say yes strategically. Say yes to the things outside of what you have to do every day that is going to progress your career. A collaborative study, something where you are going to get some benefit and can show that you are actually progressing in research. And then, as I mentioned already, collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. It is the easiest way to build your CV, to get some publications, to co-supervise some students, and also for you to gain new skills from people which don't know exactly the same stuff that you do. Collaborate with people that know stuff other than the things that you do. Right, it also is the best way to get grants and to get students, and then make yourself visible internally, go to things, but I'm preaching to the converted because here you all are. Okay, so if there's time, I'm not sure. What are the things that get most in the way? So besides the elephants which we have addressed, and what do you see from people around you who have been successful? There's people in this room, Mervyn, who have done amazing things in research, but he has got extremely clinical focus, but he has been promoted to a professor. So what are the things that other people are doing that you see is a recipe for success. And what support is missing? What are the things that you would like to see coming from the faculty? What are the things that we could do to make your lives easier?